Olwethu Nodada is a passionate and intentional advocate for empowering the girl child and creating spaces where individuals from all walks of life are seen, heard, and given the space to achieve to their highest potential. A former national marketing manager for Africa's largest optometric network, her transition into media and broadcasting has come as an aggravating and challenging adventure. She's had the honor of being crowned Miss South Africa Second Princess in 2020 and confines to serve as a mentor for the organization. After only 2 years in the industry, she is now a radio host on Cape Town's biggest radio station. She is the go-to host and MC for multinational corporates across the country and serves on the board of Amehlo Trust, which seeks to empower young black female optometrists through equity funding for their own businesses. As a broadcaster, community builder, businesswoman, and speaker, her biggest role is being mom to 2 girls who she wishes to inspire to excellence by being a solid example of hard work, commitment, and leading with kindness.
Oh, wow. A very beautiful good afternoon to our FGLers, our Future Global Leaders Club ambassadors, and our proud parents. A very big warm welcome to our special guests all the way from Cote d'Ivoire. My name is Olwethu Nodada. It's such a privilege to have all of you join us this Saturday afternoon for an incredible session, our final webinar. It's titled A Power Session, Inspiring Your Minds Towards Attaining 8 Distinctions. We've got Kwakho Mangqasha, who's a superstar. He got his 8 distinctions. He's going to take you through how to get yours. Before we get into it, before I introduce our guest speaker, of course, we all know that the Future Global Leaders Club, that is a club for elite achievers, was founded by a 14-year-old girl some 2 years ago. She's now a grade 11 learner and is 16 years old. Let's do a reminder as what is the basis for the Future Global Leaders Club. Here's a video.
My name is Lisa Zima. I'm 13 years old and I am the founder of the Future Global Leaders Club. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this prestigious and esteemed club that is exclusive to consistently hardworking, determined, intelligent, diligent, and ambitious learners like you. You have shown your potential to strive for the best no matter what it takes. If you want to be consistently consistent in your academic excellence, if continuous improvement is your motto, and if you want to be inspired into greatness, then the Future Global Leaders Club is your virtual home. I officially welcome you as we entrench and firmly embed ourselves as the global leaders of the future.
Wow, into our final webinar for the year. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good, and you, Olwethu?
So good to see you. Look absolutely beautiful. I'm excited. It's our final session, a power session. Any final words to the FGLers before we start the session?
I just want to firstly say good afternoon to the FGLers. Today is a special day for the Future Global Leaders Club. You know, as Richard Branson says, if your dreams don't scare you, then they're too small. And, you know, being a founder of the Future Global Leaders Club was, you know, a very scary thing for me because I wanted it to get to a point where it'll be internationally recognized as the most effective club, you know, that nurtures ambitions, instills excellence, and inspires greatness that will position its members consistently ahead, you know, in the race of life. And this was and still is the vision of the club. But today is the very first step towards the vision, which makes this day special because in this webinar, we have guests from Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire who are joining us in our last inspirational webinar for the year. Abidjan is almost 8,000 kilometers away from us. So, this is a really, really significant milestone. And, I was so excited to learn about the interest that they have expressed, on the vision and the mission of the Future Global Leaders Club. So to all our Abidjan guests, bonjour and akwaba. This means welcome. In the next 3 months, the formal French chapter of the club will be launched, and then the website will then be available in English and French. But back to the purpose of the day, it's quite unbelievable, that we're wrapping up the year now and, we're all preparing for our final lap towards, our ultimate success. We have studied throughout the year, we've been doing our best, and now it's time, to show up and to shine for our final exams. And, our guest today, Mr. Kwakho Mangqasha, reaped the benefits of his hard work with 8 distinctions, which is no child's play at all, and to learn from the best like him will really inspire us to also achieve the best. So thank you so much, Kwakho, for making the time for the members of the Future Global Leaders Club, despite your actuarial studies at Wits University, because I'm sure it's really, really demanding. And, we really appreciate you, and we're really grateful for your interest and investment towards our success. We're going to be taking notes, we're going to be engaging, and we're going to be walking in your footprints, and inspiring our minds to really emulate your greatness. And to the FGLers, with the exams fast approaching, in the next 10 days for the matriculants and a little later for the rest of us, I dedicate this quote by Les Brown that says, "Do what is easy and your life will be hard. Do what is hard and your life will be easy." So this means that, we need to work hard now. We need to, sacrifice now. We need to persevere now so that, our marks and our results, lead to an easy life long term.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Alicia. We appreciate it. I know you're going to be super engrossed in the session, taking all the notes. A big congratulations on the news about Cote d'Ivoire. We are so proud to see the vision of the Future Global Leaders Club extend to such great heights. We appreciate you. All right, let's get into the session. Our founder has set up the foundation to make sure that we are really involved in the session. It has to be interactive to make sure that you get the very best out of the next hour and a half. We have Kwakho Mangqasha, who is currently doing his second year at Wits and doing his BSc in Actuarial Science. He was born in and raised in the rural village of Engqeleni, just outside of Mthatha. He completed his higher education as Inyisa Comprehensive High School in 2002, where he left super proud with 8 distinctions. 3 of those were A pluses. He got 94% in physical science, 95% in mathematics, and an astounding 99% in accounting. His hard work and dedication led him to be invited by the Premier of the Eastern Cape to the Top Achievers Awards, where he got position 1 in Cluster A as the top learner. He is focused, he's dedicated, and is here to inspire your minds towards excellence, towards 8 distinctions. Kwakho, welcome to the Future Global Leaders Club. Thank you so much for your time. The floor is yours.
So today's presentation overview is as follows. I'm actually going to let you on about my biography, the early childhood and the lower levels of education, and then get into navigating teenagehood and actually getting into high school. Then the main business of the day, which is actually the grade 12 aspects, and then lastly transitioning to the university, and there we are starting. As a lot of you may have heard, my name is Kwakho Mangqasha. I'm from the rural areas of Engqeleni, in a small village called Nkumandeni. My town is actually a small town under maybe a bigger town, which is Mthatha in the Eastern Cape. I am the last born from my father and mother. I'm actually a twin, so I don't know how you say you're a last born as a twin, whether we are last born or I'm the last born. Anyway, both of my parents were or are teachers by occupation. We grew up from a large family of siblings and cousins, the extended family. So you can imagine that. I went on and did my lower grades at St. Patrick's Junior Secondary School and then marched on to do my higher grades at Zingisa Comprehensive High School, where I also matriculated with 8 out of 8 possible distinctions, which got me a prestigious invite to the Premier's Eastern Cape Awards in 2023 for the 2022 NSC exams, where I also was privileged enough to get a scholarship to university. So driven by that motivation, the enthusiasm, and the hunger for success and knowledge, I forged on from high school to one of the most prestigious universities in South Africa. I'm sure you can guess by even before I actually tell you the university itself. I'm currently doing my BSc Actuarial Science second year, the University of Witwatersrand, commonly known as Wits. So now we get into the early childhood and the lower levels of education. As one may expect from a person who grew up from the rural areas, actually grew up growing, herding cattle, sheep, and goats like any other boy from the rurals. Like any other aspect in life, that had its own advantages and disadvantages, from playing in the field with the boys, swimming, and which can also turn into a lot of other bad stuff, as young tender men do when they're actually isolated, But then, however, the life lesson there was to focus more on the advantages other than the disadvantages. And luckily for me, I had my twin brother to share all those bittersweet moments with. St. Patrick's, as I've mentioned, which was my primary school, was actually close to 2 hours away from my home, which meant that I had to wake up at least 3 hours before the morning school bell. So imagine waking up at 4 a.m. every day, coming back around 6 p.m. because we used the public school transport, which actually also catered for high school students, meaning that it was reasonable for the transport to come back around 6 p.m. every day. And then you would actually have to come back and then take in the livestock into the cattle. Bear in mind, one also had homework almost on a daily basis, excuse me. One also needed a couple of hours. So imagine doing all that in a span of a day, which is 24 hours. That's very mind blowing if you ask me. Of course, I was always this brilliant, enthusiastic kid. So juggling all the above and also achieving great results was a no-brainer to me or my twin brother either. I knew that I had to accomplish and to live up to the standard I actually had set for myself from a very, very young age. So passing so well from such a tender age meant that getting the A's, the distinctions, was just business as usual at home. And consequently of that, we were never really celebrated the distinctions from primary or high school either, but we'll get to the latter soon. So that also had, whether you can question whether you are saying it's a small impact or a large impact in terms of struggling to celebrate life's smallest achievements to date. But I always assumed that I could have done more. But from looking at it from the bright side, my parents actually instilled this mentality of excelling to me, no matter the circumstances, which I'd actually love to pass on to the FGL members and the audience today here. So the above can be both detrimental to your mental health and confidence, or can be a superb boost of energy for achieving more. Myself personally, I looked at it into, the part that drives me into achieving more than what I actually achieved, which is a superb boost, if you ask me. But the life lesson passed on to the audience now is to celebrate every achievement, no matter how big or how small it is. There's a young Kwakho Mangqasha in the province achieving position 3 in the mental math quiz. You know, um, so time accelerated, and before I knew it, I was actually high school bound. Having started primary under the supervision of my older sister, it was bound to be a little bit tricky starting high school without my older sister in the same school. High school in this instance is starting grade 8, not grade 10. Luckily, with my twin brother and my marks, it was hard for any school not to admit the both of us into the same school as desired. So we ended up at Zingisa Comprehensive High School. So, as passionate as I was, I continued excelling from grade 8 and 9, having retained uh, the top achiever position 1 in both grades, and astonishingly, in grade 9, both my twin brother and I were tied position 1. Which was a very, very special moment for us. So, but then there's one thing I'd actually like to pass on to the audience. In grade 8, it was the first time for me doing creative arts, and that was, the only subject that gave me a problem. Some of you may be surprised because I'm sure you all think that I've heard you are all smart kids. So I'm sure you are surprised that I had actually been struggling with creative arts in grade 8. But I did not let it overcome me, in terms of letting it just be an obstacle. I tackled it in terms of asking my teacher advices how to tackle it. So what I did was that I spent less time with the subjects that I was comfortable with. You name them, the math, the natural sciences. Actually, put more focus on creative arts to actually, bring the marks up higher to my standards. And then we're actually going to subject selection for grade 10, where as a surprise, I chose accounting amongst the least surprising choices of the science, physical sciences, life sciences, you name them, and pure mathematics, of course. You know, so that choice was driven by the love for numbers. I'm sure anyone who's doing or did accounting in high school in this meeting will tell you how the accounting subject comprises of numbers. So that was love at first sight. However, I was not very good at it either, in terms of it was still in the EMS part in grade 8 and 9. So choosing it was a surprise both for me and for my father as well, who thought I would actually go with the science route all the way. Nonetheless, I told myself that mark, because I had a rating 5, it was never staying there. The rating 5 was always going to go up. But then you always have to start somewhere. You can't aim from a rating 5 to a rating 7. So I started from a rating 5, upped my goals to a rating 6, and then that's where I got to a rating 7 after. And then now we're in 2020, grade 10. COVID hit after 3 months of school, which kind of disrupted everything. So we actually had to go home for a break of 6 months, of not touching books at all, because you're in the rural areas. All you can do is go to the farm, go to the cattle, etc., etc. So coming back from that was a little bit difficult in terms of conditioning my mind into studying again and doing a lot of other things. Fortunately, the year ended very fast. We covered a lot, um, a lot smaller content than we should have in grade 10. A lot more was covered in grade 9, so which was very advantageous to me. But then, approaching the end of that year, the unfortunate event, and I think the most least event occurred, which shattered me, the passing of my father. So going to grade 11 the following year, I had lost interest in school, and one would argue that I also met the wrong people because I had started getting into this behavior of not wearing uniform the correct manner, wearing secret socks to school, wearing tight pants which were not allowed in school, and which in my opinion was not aesthetically pleasing at all, wearing tight pants and but then I'm not attacking anyone, any FGLer or any top achiever from here who's doing that. I mean, yeah. So I want to incorporate an aspect of resilience into the grade 12 and the grade 11s who are actually listening here, because that's what I did. That's what I had in terms of overcoming the matter of being disinterested from school and the passing of my father, and there was a lot of also support from coming from my family, so it's very important that I actually did some self introspection, and in terms of getting support from the family and what to reciprocate them with. Actually, the best way was to reciprocate them to being who I was, to being this top achiever that I was, and getting awards, so that's basically how I condition my mind to be going into grade 11, the finals, you name them, And before the COVID hit, I was actually a very participant learner, a debater, participated in Olympiads and public speaking. I was also keen in pursuing leadership roles, but then I'm sorry to make an example of my brother here, but then apparently since my brother's marks dropped, since he was part of the presidency, the RCL in his year, my father actually forbidden me from participating in such events. So I couldn't be in the leadership role in high school because of that. But you actually have to accept what your parents want for you, because they always want what's best for you. And now we're actually getting into the main part, the main focus of the day, which is inisixhosa undo. You know, I think it's a bit unfortunate as I get to address this audience a bit later towards the year, because I believe I bring such excellent advice, and but then hope they utilize the following more than ever before. The end of the day, life in general is about finding what's best for you and using it to strive. However, please do not worry if you have not yet found what works for you yet. You are in the right place, I promise. So in my year, in 2022, we opened on the 3rd of January for the metric calendar year. And I also moved from staying at home to actually renting a place near school, for, obvious purposes, the ease of transport, actually going from school to the home was actually draining. So imagine transitioning from not cooking for yourself to cooking yourself every day. But luckily, I think my twin brother loves or loved cooking, so it was not that a big deal for me. So, a week of opening, I had been advised by the previous top achiever at Ngisa to ask for question papers even before the content has been covered and try to do them. That's what I had set myself to do as early as the first couple of weeks. I actually set myself a nice environment. And at the time, we had only opened for math and physics for 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks, from the 3rd of January, it was for math and physics only. Schools hadn't officially opened yet. So having had these question papers, I was determined to do at least one per week. That was my plan for the first 2 weeks, right? So, however, not having covered enough content yet, it made these question papers very tricky to complete, So a bit of insight into my schedule. The school ended at 1:30 p.m. So I put 2 hours for physics and math every day after that to keep up with the class content. And then I usually go for an evening jog for 20 to 30 minutes to get my mind rejuvenated for another 2 hours, where I would interchangeably watch YouTube videos for math and physics. So that was very advantageous for me in terms of identifying that I actually learned using videos. That was another study method that benefited me the most. So I utilized the Mlungisi Nkosi, and some may also like Kevin Math Science from YouTube. Here are the links on the slide, but don't worry. The FGLers, you need not to worry. The link will be shared to you by the likes of Mrs. Olwetu, Ubudlulamile, etc. So I had this huge jump start for myself in math and physics before most of my peers, right? Then when schools officially opened 2 weeks later, I had to alter my timetable to accommodate other subjects now, which meant that on a daily basis, I could do math, physics, and accounting for 1 hour each for 3 of the 5 days, of the 5 school days. Then life sciences and geography each had their own days, which were Thursday and Friday, respectively. And then Sundays, I would incorporate a novel or short story so as not to neglect languages. My only flaw was neglecting life orientation, which I'm sure, by the way, that grade 12s are done with them. But a little advice to grade 11s and 10s, if they are here, do not neglect LO. It's very important. you know. So what came as a shock to me was the term one results, where I was not position one in math. So it was very surprising to me because I believe I had done a lot of work, but I did not take it in the negative manner, which is something most of you must develop. I did not take it in a negative manner. Rather, I'd actually asked myself, what did I do wrong and what did I not do? So there comes now the matter of resilience and still wanting to achieve your goals. I had to change my methods slightly. And so one way I did was that I started visualizing more in terms of the questions I'm doing. If you're doing functions, for an example, in math, just visualize the function in your mind. So that helped me in terms of adding another study method in my backpack. And another one was having sticky notes in the study area where you study. In my study board, I had sticky notes which were bright. They helped a lot in terms of capturing and remembering the content, especially the content subjects. If you have them in front of you when you're sitting in your desk, like I am right now, looking at them and seeing bright colors, it makes the work a little bit more interesting, and you want to apply yourself and invent yourself in the work because it looks aesthetically pleasing. So now, actually heading into the preparatory and final exams is another important part of this presentation. So closer to the preparatory exams, or the what do you call them, the trial exams, when most of the content was covered, I formulated a study group which was mostly designed to help each other deal with the exam conditions, which mainly focused on math and physics. Because in June, that's why I didn't touch a lot in June, because we did not write the common exams as other schools, because we were a little bit behind. So the trials were our first exam condition exposure. So every Saturday, because we also had Saturday classes, we did one question papers for math and one question paper for physics under strict exam conditions, and applying to the time allocated. In math and physics and accounting, not so much in accounts, but the golden rule was spending 1.2 minute per mark, but I'll get into greater detail of that later in these slides. So we only managed to do a few question papers because we were actually, as I said, in June we were behind, so we had actually had a lot to cover at school. So we did a few question papers though because of time. So heading into the trials, we had less exposure, exam exposure. And then one other aspect I'd like you not to do is what I did, which was taking a gamble before writing life sciences paper one and decided to cross night. I'd never cross nighted before. So please, especially now when you are going to do write your final exams, do not do something you haven't done before because there's a lot of risk attached to it. Luckily for me, it was still the trials, and you guys do not have that opportunity anymore. You are in the last chance. So a long story short, because I did not get enough rest and I actually crammed a lot of content, I couldn't finish the question paper. So as a result, my marks were not the way I wanted. So after the exam, I told myself I would never cross night again. And another couple of things I learned, going into the exams was doing enough question papers for each subject, which I was very determined to do after the trial exams, and mostly do them under exam conditions, and control most variables. So it must mirror the exam condition. So there must be complete silence. So if maybe at home they're making noise, I'm sure parents are very, very supportive. You can ask your parent, mom, dad, whoever is actually supervising you. Please, for this couple of hours, I need to study. You need to be very selfish in terms of your studying, or go to the library if need be. Yeah, so just like I've mentioned, one also needed to be very selfish with their time because it was now starting to become the last rush, as it is for you guys. Parents and friends need to adhere to your schedule and everything. So being selfish does not mean you need not to help students who need help. Because I've heard that you guys are smart. You are the creme de la what. So you actually have the capabilities of helping people. Please do so when you have that opportunity, and maximize on your strength and improve drastically on your weaknesses. As I've mentioned, I did not do well for life sciences in the trials, but then having applied myself to the content afterwards, I began to develop some love for life sciences. And I believe that's the only way you can actually pass something to your satisfaction. It's by loving what you're doing. And when after the trials, you lot must have highlighted your strength and your weaknesses and assess them properly. You learn from your mistake. Example, as I also learned from my life science exam mistake. Then now heading to your final exam, you must have set your personal realistic goals. Underline the keyword there, it's realistic. So you have to have realistic goals. And there's one subtle point that people forget to mention. It's the amount or the type of food that you guys take before writing the exam. You must take a balanced food diet. Try by all means for that to happen. Maybe eat a lot of vegetables, fruit, you name them. Maintaining that also implies that having a more balanced social life. Don't strain yourself with books. Don't strain yourself. Have enough rest. You must sleep. And I cannot stress this part of sleeping enough more. On the next slide, are a few benefits of getting enough sleep. So it says here benefits of sleeping is boosting immune system. It helps prevent weight gain, improves mood, strengthen your heart health, increases productivity, increase exercise performance, and improves memory. And indeed, you want to head into your final exams having your memory in its optimal functioning. You want your immune system to be at its best. You don't want to be falling sick before writing an exam. And the productivity levels. they must be at the top as well, which amongst the benefit of getting sleep, and sleeping also improves memory regulation, and which is very desirable going to the final stage of this year. As I've mentioned before, I also kept my mind fresh by exercising every evening with a 20 to 30-minute jog. So it's all about finding what's working for you. These are just a few other aspects of what worked for me in my metric year. So as I've said, you must put yourself in exam conditions, and I think doing that with a couple of your peers, your friends, whoever you study with, actually helps. And a bit of competition here and there, which must be healthy. Because I know people amongst my grade who were competing against each other. They refused to help each other when one needs this and that, because their sole goal was to do better than the other, which is not very good for metric or for tertiary and other levels of work, I suppose. So the state of mind now heading into the exams, you must have a detailed exam study timetable, which must be curated according to how much one has assessed themselves to need how much time for each subject. You know, so please I'd advise that when you are curating your timetable, spend a lot of time in it so that you actually adhere to the timetable, because once you do something outside your timetable, I don't think you will follow it again, which will be detrimental to your goal. Most importantly, is the mindset going to the examinations. One thing that must be lingering in your minds at the moment is that I can and I will do it. Whatever you've set yourself to do, I will do it. For instance, since I'm inspiring you to 8 distinctions, your mind must be saying I can and I will achieve 8 distinctions. There must be no room for doubt, because the moment you start doubting yourself, that's when a lot of things start to creep in. That's when you start doubting yourself. That's when you start being unsure of what to do, when, and how. And then
Sorry to
there's the part
interrupt
of
you. I just want to, sorry, Kwakho, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to go back to that first point, where you're talking about a detailed exam timetable. In this slide, in the state of mind heading to exams. So what was your typical timetable? What did it look like? How did your morning session look? What did your afternoon session look like? What did your evening session look like? And how did you allocate the times to each subject?
No, that's a very great question, Sisole. Thank you. So, in terms of the detailed timetable, what I had was that, right, because it was after the trials, exactly the time that the grade 12s are in right now. So the
Mm.
content was covered, all of it. So what I did was having, because we were not going to school either. So I had 3 hours for math. You do a question paper for 3 hours, because I think paper one or paper two in math is 3 hours. So you do that the whole 3 hours for mathematics. You have the whole day, right? You wake up in the morning, you do 3 hours for math, right? And then you do not look at the memorandum whatsoever. You finish the question paper in 3 hours, no matter how many questions you struggle to answer. You finish it, and then the additional 1 hour is for you looking at the memo, assessing where you went wrong, what you did or didn't do. And then after that, you go on. If maybe calculus was a problem for you, you go on to your calculus notes, you read them, you do some calculus specific questions. Now you're not no longer doing the whole question paper. You're doing calculus questions or trigonometric questions only until maybe you feel like, no, I've mastered it. I would actually spend another hour for mastering whatever I did not get correct in the mock exam that I had for myself. So that was about 5 hours for math if I woke up in the morning. And then that's another 5 hours for any other 3 hour exam. For instance, physics. Physics, I did the same as well. Then for accounting, it was strictly 2 hours. And I feel like 2 hours was a little bit less time needed to cover for the exam. So if anyone here is doing accounting, they must make sure that they time themselves, sorry, to the exactly the 2 hours required for accounting, and do the same for accounting. Do not look into the memo. You write paper one for 2 hours, controlling all the variables, the noise, whatever is on your table. It must be as if you are writing an exam. It must be clean, nothing, there are no books, nothing. Then you are writing your exam. You do the same thing. You correct yourself after the memo. You revise the topic that was difficult for you. That's how I was conditioning myself in terms of the timetable. So I had the timetable for math, physics, accounting in one day, and then I add a little bit of a novel. It depends
Mm.
also on how the exams are structured, on when I am going to write which exam. For instance, if I'm going to write math on a Friday and it's a Wednesday, I'm no longer touching physics maybe, because I need to focus solely on math.
Mm.
And then in the weekend again, you focus on math because you're writing math again on Monday. Then after that, you can also focus on the other subject that you are going to write in the following days. You do not start the subject, you do not start preparing for the subject before you write. Right now
Mm.
is you get all the time you have to prepare for the subject. I mean, you have, I think, 2 3 weeks at maximum that you can use to prepare yourself for the exam. So I don't know if this all to that answers your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, and one more important question is the 1.2 minute per mark.
Mm.
That's very important because if, let's say, question two is 18 marks, by my calculation, I think that's around about 24 25 minutes that you should spend on the 18-mark question. So if, let's say, you're looking at the time, you're looking at the clock in the exam, and 24 minutes has elapsed, you're still in the same question, just move to the next question, move to another question. And in terms of tackling math, in terms of tackling any other subject that you're going to write, my advice would be starting with the questions that you're comfortable with, to build momentum, because you do not want to be in a test and starting, let's say, for to be specific, I struggled with trigonometry, right? So there was no chance for me to start with trigonometry in exam because I know there will be that one question that will deal with me in trigonometry, and that will put more pressure because firstly, an exam is a pressured environment. So if you're also putting yourself under pressure, then that's going to be a little bit tricky for you. But then if you start with maybe question one in paper one, which is solving for x, you know that maybe, let's say, if question one is 21 marks, you can be done maybe in 17 minutes. So that's 4 minutes saved. That's 4 minutes that you can apply into maybe trigonometry, if trigonometry is your least comfortable subject. Probability, for an example, as my specific problem as well, because we did not do probability in grade 10 or 11 because of the conditions of the COVID-19. So yeah, the 1.2 minute per mark is very important. And the part of starting with the easiest question in the question paper, so as to build momentum, so as to, and condition your mind as to saying, okay, now I'm in an exam, and I've spent maybe 20 minutes in the exam. I've been writing and I've been stuck. So that builds a lot of confidence going to the harder questions. You'll be like, I didn't get stuck for 25 minutes. Why would I get stuck in this question? And for all you know, the solution will come. I don't know where, how it will come, because you were doing these questions. You knew that I struggled with trigonometry, so I spent more time with trigonometry. I was struggling maybe if you're doing physics with acids and bases. So I spent a lot of more time in acids and bases rather than organic chemistry, for an example, So it's all about assessing where am I getting, which topic is not comfortable for me and which one is. So there's a couple of yeah. So I've mentioned the 1.2 minute per mark, and to be specific for me, before actually going to the exam, in this period specifically, I used to do 5 question papers per subject in a week. And another thing that's very important, which I would actually tell you guys, is to do the question papers, the trial question papers for each province. So for all the other 8 provinces, rather than focusing on Eastern Cape or maybe focusing on Gauteng because you believe Gauteng papers are a little bit harder than Free State papers. You need to do all the other 8 provincial question papers, the recent ones. Something similar will come in the November exam from it, and you can do it. It will be a walk in the park. So as I was saying, that another technique which I was using heading towards the exam was doing more of the harder questions, higher order questions than the easier ones. And I believe you do not learn anything whilst you are being in your comfort zone. I mean, what's the benefit of you actually having pride in yourself that I can solve for X in a second, but you cannot derive maybe something from first principles in calculus in the required time. So rather spend more time deriving the derivative of the function rather than priding yourself in saying I can solve X in a split second. So for me, I applied myself more in trigonometry, as I've told you, probability, and in chemistry was a lot more harder for me than physics, meaning paper 2 physical sciences was a lot more harder for me than paper 1 physical sciences. So it's all about assessing what you are battling with, as I've been reiterating and I'm iterating again. Assess your weaknesses and your strength and focus more on your weaknesses. You also need a balance. I mean, you do not need a 99% in math and maybe an 82 in physics or life sciences. Then if you have 90 somethings, then rather have 90 somethings than 176. That's what I believe in, maybe. Yeah. And that's what is very important, trying to balance each of all your subjects. Try to
That is
develop
such an
love.
important point. Sorry, Kwakho, to interrupt you. That is such an important point because the question is, how do I get the 8 distinctions? And that balance is important. Um, can you maybe reiterate that again? Let's just repeat that point again, because another question has come in is, how do you manage multiple subjects at the same time while prepping for finals? So that's such an important point that you're raising there, that chasing 100% for one subject but neglecting the others means you're not going to get the 8 distinctions.
Okay, so it also starts in your goals, right? So for your goals, if you had targeted 8 distinctions, then you will know that, okay, at least maybe 2 out of the 8 distinctions I'm sure of that I will get. For instance, if you were comfortable in math from first term, you've been getting A pluses, 95s, 98s, then you are sure that in the finals I'll be getting a 99 for math. So let me rather focus on the geography that's on 78. Sorry. So if geography is on 78, that means you are spending less time in mathematics and focusing more on the geography, so that the geography it actually moves up from the 78 to maybe an 88. It can move depending on your attitude towards the geography. And utilizing the teachers. There's a lot of resources teachers actually present to students. Question papers, the memos you will get from your teachers. So in terms of balancing a couple of subjects, that's the underlying core concept, is to focus less on your strengths and focusing more on your weaker subjects. I'm not saying neglect maths because you know that I'll pass math. Please don't do that. do not neglect math because you know you pass math. A surprise may be waiting for you, you know. So just allocate the required amount of time for each subject, you know. For me, since I knew, because for math was never below a 95 for in grade 12, so I spent heading into the final exams. And by the way, my goal for math was 100%, which I did not achieve for, I don't know how, or I do know, and I'm also going to elaborate on that, you know. In terms of being obsessed in terms of achieving 100% for math, that's very dangerous, you know, because another thing that happened was math was the first exam, so there was a lot of pressure instilled in me, you know. So please, guys, do not put a lot of pressure on yourselves. Yes, you are eyeing for 8 distinctions, but that does not mean you must put yourself under so much pressure, you know. As I've said, there are a lot of mechanisms to reduce pressure: drinking water, stay uh, hydrated, you know, exercise if you're someone who likes to exercise, you know, maybe take a break, call your mom 5 minutes if you are away from them, call your brother, whoever, whatever helps you digress from the complexity of the work. I do not know, Sis Olo, to whether the person was asking or your question was answered.
Yes, perfectly answered in Gosport. Thank you so much.
All right. Is there any other question maybe you have?
No, sorry. I just didn't want to miss that point and then you'd move on to something else. The floor is all yours.
Oh, all right, all right. And then there is a lot more emphasis which must be put on how discipline and hard work were one of the most, you know, important factors to remaining as the top student from like the first term, you know. Because if you're not disciplined and you do not show respect to any maybe of your peers, to any of your teachers, I know people who actually went rogue in terms of who were competing with me, but then their mindset let them down into thinking, I've passed all 3 terms. No, I need not to put more hard work heading to the final term because I know I'm going to pass. That's very dangerous. So continue the hard work and put more hard work this time because this is your last rush. This is the last push. Everything must be done thoroughly, more now than ever, you know. And yeah, I think I've spent quite a lot of time elaborating on, you know, the inspirations inspiring you to get to these 8 distinctions. I'm just trying to check whether I've left something which was important to highlight. Yeah, I do not think I did. Oh, one of the most important things was actually how do you recover from, because I went into the math exam eyeing for 100%, right? I got out of the math exam knowing that I did not get the 100% because there were two couple of 4 marks in trigonometry, which I'm sure they were the problem. So another way, and another thing I want to speak about is how now you conditioning your mind in terms of moving from, okay, I did not achieve the goal that I had, which was 100% for math. How do I then get myself up and actually ace the other exams, you know? So it was all about, okay, now I need to make up for the 100% that I did not have because I know my goal. It's to actually get the 8 distinctions, and it's to get them in the most stellar way possible, and actually aiming maybe to be in the province or national, you know. So if you know you did not do very well maybe in the math because you do not get 100%, now you must leave mathematics, you know. Mathematics is done. You've written mathematics for the last time in your metric, you know. You won't write math again. Rather now shift your mind, shift your focus into focusing in another subject. Math is over. There's nothing you can do about it. Did not get 100%, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. I mean, for all I know, you may think that you may have missed a lot more marks than you did, you know. You may think that you missed 12 marks, but it may end up that you only missed maybe 6, you know, which is not that bad. But then if now you will be focusing on the fact that you did not get the 100% for math, you did not get the 98 for math you were wanting, now that becomes that becomes trouble, and it will affect your other subjects, you know. So rather do that and shift your mind completely from math, and do what you didn't do in math in the other subjects, you know. Yeah. Yeah, that's just about it. And I'm now getting into uh there are the pictures of me in the 2022, you know, provincial awards as the position 1 cluster A top achiever.
Wait, we're not seeing that. Oh, there we go.
And now I'd actually like to speak here and there about the tertiary level and beyond, you know. Upon you guys being the top achievers that you are, and me inspiring you to your 8 distinctions, you know, there's one important aspect that a lot of students did not do in their matric is actually researching about their dream course, what they want to do in university, because a lot of people here come and become a little bit stressed because what they do. Please tell, please
Sorry,
mute.
FG Alice, please make sure your microphones and your videos are off. Sorry about that, Kwakho.
All right. So I've been saying that you must have done thorough research on your dream course, and you know, come here knowing what you want to do, why, and what drives you to do what you are going to do. Because a lot of people come, they get accepted maybe into vets, but now they're accepted for accounting, but they do not love accounting anymore because they did not research that accounting is no longer um, numerical. It's very theoretical. It's very, practical. It's no longer just numbers. It needs you to apply yourself to the work, you know. So please do a lot of research. And another advice is actually do not go for best university than the course, you know. If you get accepted for medicine in, say, maybe UKZN, but then you get accepted for a BCom something at Vets or at UCT, my advice is for you not to go to UCT for a BCom, which won't help you that much compared to medicine at the UKZN, for an example. And there's one other aspect which we had been told as top achievers, that bursaries come to you and you do not need to apply for bursaries. Uh, that can be true and that can be very, very false, you know. So it's in your best interest to have been applying for bursaries here where there is funding, you know. Yeah, and that's me in actually in my first year, which means last year, obtaining 5 distinctions in first year actuarial sciences, you know. So this is me trying to say I'm instilling mindset in you guys that you will get into university and people will tell you that a 50% is a distinction. I'm sure you've heard that narrative, maybe if you are on the socials, that 50% is a distinction. That's a lie. You're setting yourself for failure. You have never been used to getting 50%. So please do not start getting used to 50%. Rather, getting to university, continue with what you have been doing in your matric and what I've actually advised you to take. And good luck on your final examinations, candidates. I wish you well and thank you. Now you can actually bring the questions over.
There are so many questions. Thank you so much, Kwakho. I think we'll start with a question from Endinago, who's asking, and I think it's something we didn't cover. How do you tackle multiple choice questions? So we've dealt with the high order questions, we've dealt with the solving and that sort of thing, but multiple choice questions, how did you tackle those?
Oh, damn, how can I forget those? Okay, I think is she being specific on physical sciences, right?
I think you can
Well,
deal with
I will
physics and
suppose that she's being specific. Yeah, I think she's being specific on physics because I'll actually go on to other subjects as well. But then for physical sciences, you had 10 multiple choice questions and you had 10 topics. So there was one multiple choice question per topic, if I remember correctly. So the best way would be, since I told you guys that you start with the questions that you're most comfortable with. For instance, if you are most comfortable with doing projectiles, you start with question 2, which is projectiles, and then you go on to multiple choice and you look for a question that has to do with projectiles. You do that question only, you move on to the next topic, because it's very difficult to actually do all 10 topics in at once, because that's what you essentially do in your multiple choice. If you start with your multiple choice from number 1 up to number 10, actually trying to remember all 10 topics in such a short space, in such a short period of time, because multiple choice is 2 marks, which means that's if you multiply 2 by 1.2, that's like 2.4, right? So you actually spend a lot less time than what you should do, because you should let your mind now condition itself from projectiles to work energy. When you are done with work energy, the question itself, you go back to multiple choice, you do the question that has to do with work energy, you go on to do electrolytes, and then you come back to the question in the multiple choice that has to do with electrolytes. And I suggest that you do that as early as now, because it can take a lot of time if you only start doing that in the exam. So
Mm.
in the preparation of the final exam, you should be doing that as well, if maybe you are someone who's struggling with the multiple choice questions. And I'm not sure which other subject had multiple choice questions, because for me it was physics, and the others did not have multiple choice, but I believe that was the best way to tackle them.
Okay,
You will
all
let
right.
me know if she's answered.
She will comment there on the chat box if that answer isn't. So your method is starting with questions that subjects and topics that you know that you are strong at, in order to build up your confidence and build up the momentum, and also
Yes,
correlating the main theory questions with the multiple choice questions. So when you're tackling a certain topic, you tackle it with the multiple choice right after.
exactly.
Okay, all right. There was you'd mentioned when you were chatting to us earlier that you'd started in your matric year about 2 weeks before school opened, and you had listened to a top achiever who'd given you the advice of how you must work on question papers immediately, and you dedicated those 2 weeks to maths and science question papers. While Tobile is asking, do you advise studying ahead than your teachers, so that by the time you're taught by your teachers, you understand it better?
Absolutely. That's the best advice I'd actually give you, because the mind actually it learns, when it actually is struggling. Because if you do, you are ahead, right, of your teacher. And then now you hit maybe, a mountain of something you do not understand. And then you actually be more focused when the teacher is actually delivering, the lecture. Oh, sorry, the I'm used to the lecturer, sorry. So the teacher actually being addressing you to the concept which you had a hard time grasping. That's when actually the brain now expands and actually lets it sink in, and that way you won't ever forget that, oh, I was struggling with maybe the definition of osmo, or what do you call this thing, I forgot the process, but yeah,
Okay, so studying ahead allows your brain to absorb the information, and then it's reinforced by the teacher, and then you go back
exactly.
and then you relook at the topic again at home. Um,
Yes.
there is a question about dealing with stress and how it affects your studies. You've spoken about a story about the passing of your dad and losing people close to you. Um, and just a question on how you are able to bounce back from that, just to reinforce that life happens. There are things that you can't control, but what you can control is how you react to it. Your thoughts on that?
So basically, the question is, how do you deal with the stress and not let it affect your studies, right?
Mm, mm,
So that's a very difficult thing to do. But how I tackled it was, utilizing the support offered to you by your friends, your family, whatever. And the best way for me, which I used to cope with whatever stress I had, was actually utilizing counseling.
mm,
I would actually advise counseling, speaking about whatever is affecting you, whatever is stressing you, So there are a lot of things that actually come up with whatever is stressing you. The solutions actually come up by themselves, but then the interesting or the most important part is that the solutions come from you. No one tells you that
mm,
you need to do this. It actually comes, it comes naturally by then. Yeah. So that's
mm.
how I dealt with stress.
Okay. All right. That's very, very grounding to know that you seek for help and then you're able to find the solutions there. Lusango wants to find out about paper two in chemistry. So you mentioned that you struggled with paper two chemistry. I'd like to think that I understand all of physics because I passed physics very well, but my chemistry results seem to be weak level sevens. How did you go about improving your chemistry? Because you ended up with a
Oh,
94.7 in physics and physical science, I think.
yeah, so the chemistry part it's commonly very okay, not challenging, but then it's commonly tricky for people who actually love math. So people who love math tend to love paper one, which is physical sciences more than chemistry. So it also goes back to actually loving chemistry, because the moment I began to develop some love for chemistry, my love actually started from the acids and bases, and because we were doing some practicals, and I was like, oh, this thing can be done practically, whereby there are some solutions and there's some things that there's some mixtures that can actually turn into something you had never thought of. So my love for chemistry actually came about in that manner, and once I loved the subject, then that's when everything started to work very well for me. So begin to start absorbing some love for it, do it more often than physics, because you also have noticed that you actually get weaker rating sevens for it than getting for physics. It's all about increasing the time you spend on chemistry and decreasing on physics, but in a balanced manner, in equilibrium.
Equilibrium. Okay. Um, I'm going to go back to how you built up your level fives to a level sevens and to your distinctions, right? I want to get like a typical clear sense of your study method. So you mentioned videos, your YouTube videos. You mentioned visualization. You also mentioned peer study in terms of helping other students, and then you mentioned group work. Can you rank those and how they became important pillars in how you achieved your eight distinctions, just for clarity?
Okay, so to be specific, the subject that was from a rating 5, it actually went on to being a 99. So that's actually accounting. So in terms of going about it, with the group, with the videos, with the visualizing, and which point was it? Yeah. So in terms of how I would rank them, it would be visualizing as the number one part of it. So it's all about when you visualize something, it actually portrays your understanding through it. So no matter what may happen with whatever, because one other thing that's very dangerous to do is actually cramming, and actually saying
Mm,
in math, this question will always come up in this manner, which in theory it's not that true. There may be times whereby examiners will change the question, but then if you
mm,
understand the core concept behind what's being asked from that question, there is no question that is actually relating to that concept will become hard for you to answer, you know. So it's actually visualizing and then doing a lot of work with your peers, you know, and that's the second most one because in most cases, especially us as you know these top achievers we are, we actually tend to think we understand a certain concept, you know. But then if you actually discuss with the group or your friends, you know, who maybe are more or less on the same level as you are, you actually come to understand that, oh, I understood this as the wrong manner. It's actually this way, you know. So you're actually correcting
Mm,
yourselves, and in that way you are never going to forget that you actually thought this process was this when it actually was that, you know. So that's the second one, the group one. And there comes the videos and what else afterwards, you know.
okay. And
Yeah.
then your question papers, you mentioned you do 5 question papers per subject. How important
Mhm.
is that number? You know, making sure that you expose yourself to the different types of questions every single time.
I think this all to five can be a minimum. You know, I
Mm,
think five can be a minimum. You can do as much as more question papers as possible, depending on how you are assessing yourself in terms. Because if you're doing the first question paper and maybe you got an 88, you must do another question paper. I mean, you did not want an 88 now, did you? You wanted 100%. So you are still very, very short. You're 12% short. That's 38 marks if my math is correct, you know. Yeah, that's 36, sorry, that's 36 marks, so you're short of 36 marks, you know. So that's a very huge mark to chase, you know. So
mm,
you do another question paper, it may or may not happen that you go from the 88 to maybe a 90, you may fall short again to an 86. So that way, if you are seeing the trend that maybe I still need to put a lot more work, I still need to do a lot more question papers than five. Because
mm,
when you may be calculating the mean, since I'm a mathematician, I'm a statistician, so you'll calculate the mean and you find that the average mark that I'm getting here is an 88 or an 89. But then you want 100, that's still a lot of work to do, you know. So you must
mm.
do a couple more question papers, you know, so that you can try for your mark to converge to that 100% you want. So doing a lot of question papers is very, very important.
Okay, I love that. Um, there was a point where you spoke about, sorry, I'm trying to get to all the messages. We have some beautiful messages of thanks and congratulations to you. There's a message from Cote d'Ivoire that's coming through saying, I'm following the presentation from Cote d'Ivoire. Thanks a lot for sharing these concrete techniques that are useful for success. So there's lots of questions here. Umont is just commenting on helping other people. My marks dropped in the previous term due to the fact that I put more time into helping others who were struggling in in the lower grades, and their marks increased, but mine dropped from the low 90s into the high 90s. I think you're probably going to say something about balance there.
So I didn't get use this earlier to his marks, they dropped or increased.
They dropped by about 4% after he said that he put more time into helping others who were struggling in lower grades. And I was told by most of the people that I'd helped that their marks increased, and but my low 90s turned to high 80s. Is there advice that you'd give with regards to dealing with this? Should I be more selfish?
Yes, you know, so the most important part, which I had mentioned in the latter slides, that you must be selfish with your time, you know.
Mm,
So as much as you want to help them, you know, because helping them, you are also benefiting, you know, because in
mm,
most cases you'd find that if you're helping the struggling students, you're actually helping them with, you know, the easier questions, which maybe you have been neglecting because you thought, these questions I know them, you know. So
mm,
the helping them actually helps you to remember those questions, you know, and to beware of maybe the tricks that the examiner may introduce in those questions, so you must limit the time that you are actually spending on helping them, because it is more about you than it's more about them, especially
Mm,
since they're in the lower grades. So yes, it may help you, but since they're in the lower grades, especially now, I think maybe t- you should try to spend a lot more time in grade 12 work more than the lower grades work.
mm, I agree with that. Now, the exam environment, you mentioned how important it is to create and replicate the exam environment when you're doing your past papers, so that you are time conscious, your environment conscious. What about the pressure that you feel within the exam room? How do you handle that? Because there's also that aspect of the nerves and the environment. It's such a big moment. How do I make sure that I don't lose focus within those 3 hours in that exam room?
Oh, the nervousness and the anxiety in
Mm,
the exam room is it's very natural. So it's not only themselves. But then the best way, is, when you are still preparing for the exam, focus change your mind, your perspective into thinking, I'm no longer in my room, no longer in the library, I'm in the exam condition. And maybe take breathing in and out procedures, maybe bringing in water into the exam room, because that's how I decreased my anxiety levels, bringing water into the exam room and having a sip or two when I need to do such. Oh, we actually had water in the exam room, so you ask for water before actually writing the paper to calm yourself down. You do some breathing in and out exercises. You maybe do some meditation. Anything that can help you not think about what's at stake, not think about what you're going to do, and try not to think about the content when actually, because what's also dangerous is you maybe we are writing a theoretical subject, before even being handed out the question papers, actually thinking, oh, what does the heart do now? And then it may happen that you do not remember actually the processes involving the
mm,
heart if you're still doing the heart in life sciences, you know and then that actually increases the pressure. But then if you condition yourself not to think about the content in maybe the first 5 minutes, then you actually, when the question paper arrives, you are in the most fresh state of mind you can ever
mm,
be. Then that's when you can actually keep going and strive.
mm. Okay. I love that advice, because when you get into the exam room, they're strangers. You mentioned that they're people, they're external moderators that you haven't seen, and they're coming into an environment where you must be super, super focused and calm.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. There is a question about accounting and time allocation within that accounting paper. Everyone is chasing 98 to 100% for accounting. How do you tackle that paper? How do you prepare to tackle that paper? And then how do you tackle the paper?
So accounting is no longer 1.2 minutes per. It doesn't follow that rule which I gave as a general rule, because it's 2 hours for 150 marks.
Mm,
So it's a little bit less time than maybe math or physics. However, accounting has a lot more fewer number of questions than maybe the 3 hour exams. As short as they are still very long. So maybe in accounting, what you should do, maybe in paper one, I think the first question was maybe an income statement or a balance sheet or something like that. Then the other questions maybe are theoretical, the indicators, the interpretations. So maybe start with the interpretations since they're theoretical, you know.
mm,
And that way there can be maybe a 4 or 5 minutes that you can save from doing that, and then that's when you can actually come back into doing income statement. However, I actually did the opposite because I was very, very strong in numbers than the word. So actually started with the income statement itself. the cash flow, the balance sheet before actually going into the theory. And I think most students actually loved the numbers more than the theory. So
Mm.
that's what you should do. Start with the numbers if you are most comfortable with them and you know that you will finish within time,
Okay. I think this question was relating specifically to paper two, and just trying to figure out how you achieved that remarkable 99% with paper two. I think the student struggles with paper two and time management in that.
Paper, oh, so paper two was a lot more in terms of the budgeting and the cost accounting, the bank reconciliation statements, if I remember correctly. So it's all about, which question you start with, and then having chosen that question, make sure that question it builds momentum, it does not destroy it. So make sure you start with the question that you know that, because immediately when you receive a question paper and maybe you turn a few pages over, you will see that, okay, I think now the cost accounting section is easier than the budgeting accounting section in this question paper, because it's not always the case. You can actually see maybe with the additional information that, oh, here there is a loan, and I know that accounting for a loan, I struggle with it more than when it's not there. And when it's not there, make sure you start with the question that does not have a loan, because you know that you are comfortable with that
Mm.
question. So yeah, in terms of the budgeting, I would advise starting with budgeting. Though budgeting was nice, and then maybe um, the bank reconciliations, your creditors control may be your last, because I know a lot of students that do not like those topics. I don't know if that helps.
Okay, thank you so much, Kwakho. Now this is a question from Musbabalu, and I guess it's around time management. Musbabalu says, I have a hectic 4 weeks on my finals. I'm writing life sciences, accounting, physical sciences, English literature, and Xhosa literature, and I have to prepare. But this week I feel like I don't do justice to mathematics. I think I'm struggling in maths than other subjects. So I'm actually in a state of dilemma. I can't decide how to prioritize. You really touched on this in terms of prioritizing how you set up your study timetable and how much time you allocate to each subject to wrap up your 8 distinctions. Can you just highlight on that one just one more time?
So I think the positive thing that he or she has outlined is that she has seen that she's kind of struggling with maybe mathematics, and in terms of putting in more work in mathematics. So that's the starting place. That's the building block. Now you've seen that, okay, I need to put more time in mathematics. Then do measures which allow you to put more time in mathematics. Prioritize mathematics more, maybe decrease maybe English literature a lot less than maybe increasing math, because it's all about how you assess what you need and how you can actually make something that approaches what you need.
Okay. An important balance and self-awareness is something that's very important, which is something that you've honed so beautifully. I'm just trying to see any other questions here to make sure that I don't miss anything critical that the FG editors have asked me in the group. Andy Nago, in terms of goal setting, this is an important one, and I think you touched on it. Do you recommend specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-framed goals? How do I set my goals to make sure that when I land, I'm still landing somewhere that's really going to make me proud? Specific,
Okay.
measurable, attainable, and realistic goals.
Yes, so she has touched on a very important point in terms of this being realistic. So your goals must be realistic. I mean, if you have been, let's say, I don't want to demotivate anyone, so please, it's all about the mindset. Please try not to look at what I'm going to say in a negative manner. But then, if maybe you are someone which I know you aren't, if you are someone who's getting maybe a 65 in math, and then it's technically infeasible for you to go from a 65, let's say from the trials, to a 95. So it's all about setting the goal that you know it's achievable. You know, it's all about setting what maybe you had achieved before, and maybe, you know, you fell short on some instances. I mean, and it's all about the range that you've acquired. You know, if maybe on the first term you've acquired a 98, an 86. I mean, you've been a kid who achieved a 98. So setting a goal towards 98% is something which you can do, because you've seen that I actually had achieved a 98 before. And in terms of setting the goal, in terms of when, where, you know, to fall short, it's all about monitoring your progress, you know. So it's, yeah, so if you, the progress is very, maybe it's very steep, it means you are progressing very sharply, then it's allowed for you, you know, to set goals which range very highly, you know, because you know that you, the progress which in which you've been working on, it actually is growing exponentially, right? So you can set something between an 88 to 100, so that you can also minimize the chance of disappointment, because just being disappointed, it can actually take a toll on you again, you know. So we're actually setting goals which are realistic, so that we need not to be disappointed when we actually receive what we got.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you to wrap up this incredible hour and a bit of how to get your mindset right and get your 8 distinctions. I'd like you to highlight um, things that must happen and things that mustn't happen, just so that we have that final one.
Okay. No. So to wrap up, a couple of questions have been asked, and I think one of the most asked question here is the time management. So you've seen that you guys are struggling allocating your time towards your different subjects, you know. So which is something from now on is which is something you should be working on achieving, you know, making sure you can allocate your time well in your questions, in your subjects, etc., etc. So that's something one must be doing right now. And another thing that you guys must be doing is actually going back to the you know, the question papers, and doing a lot more question papers than you've been doing. It does not matter whether you've been doing the question paper and papers and you've actually been getting maybe the 100%. Please go and do the question papers again, because I think you still have ample time in terms of doing it. And then one needs not to be reducing their time for anything, you know. You need not to be reducing your studying time, your maybe revising time for washing dishes at home, you know. You must speak to your mom, you ask her, you are no, you are left with a month and 4 weeks, I don't know, you know. So that's, I think that's a little time for your mother, you know, to actually allow you to do a work whenever you are free, you know. And friends, maybe some of you maybe have friends who actually are not doing grade 12. They must not, they must understand that right now there is no time to play. It's actually the last push for you guys. I mean, your marks are very, very significant. You need to achieve the 8 distinctions in terms of, for you to get accepted to your dream course. Because oh, one other thing I forgot to mention is that the bar has been raised high now, you know. People who get maybe 6 distinctions can still get rejected for medicine, you know. So you need to do better, you know. And it also goes back to that point of researching, you know. Should have known that I've researched, and what I want needs 8 distinctions. Therefore, you will need to make sure that you get your 8 distinctions, because you need to be where you need to be. And I think that's one of the most important points in this chat. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kwakho. There is a message here that comes through from one of our guests. I need to find it because it's such a beautiful message. It says, "We are so proud of you, Mr. Mangqasha. continue grinding, Dlomo. Ulafika says, honestly, for some reason I was so relaxed, but now ndiyaqonda ukuba ubunzulu obubaluleka ukuba ndizimisele kule kota yokugqibela. Enkosi bhuti, Ulafika iyabulela, because you've highlighted how important this final stretch is and how it's so important for them to finish well. Enkosi kakhulu bhuti Kwakho, we have a beautiful video here. You've spoken about mindset so often. You've spoken about being realistic. You've spoken about resilience. You've spoken about the hunger and setting goals high. We got the lion mindset video here that we want to motivate our FGLers with. FGLers, take a listen and we can talk about this video just after it.
Oh, sorry, Sisolwethu. I think there's a hand from Balenhle.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Balenhle, you have the floor.
Good evening. I just wanted to ask sir for advice in terms of life sciences, because your life sciences okay, it has a lot of content, and I don't know, I find it very hard to sit down and study for. So how did he do it? Because life sciences and geography, I'm very scared of reading. I'm not a fan of reading, and it has a lot of content. So how can I stop dodging my studying for life sciences and geography?
Please refrain from you, because I've heard you saying you want to dodge. Please do not dodge. I mean, you have like 4 weeks remaining, So since you know that you do not like maybe the theory because it's a lot, I actually also recommend going back to YouTube videos. There's a lot of summaries in terms of the topics, because the topics can range from being a lot more with less content to having more content, So going to YouTube, finding some summaries there of videos with the sections, that's when you will actually want to learn more, because they are summarized in such an interesting manner, so that you would want to study the sections even more, So that's the best advice I would give you. But then please do not be lazy to cover the content. It's imperative for you to do such, especially now.
Okay, Mbali, does that answer your question? Are you happy?
Yes, and thank you.
All right. Any other FGLer who's got a question that I may have missed, something that's important? Budulamile, you can please have a look and see if there are any other hands up. Are we good?
There's Zukanya.
Zukanye?
A very good evening to everyone.
Hi.
I'm Zukanya Sipula, and I asked Kwakho about this question: how does he keep like a positive mindset in everything that he does? Because what I understand and know is that as much as we are learners and striving to acquire as much knowledge as we can, but there are certain times where we deal with a lot of obstacles. We deal with, especially if you're striving for excellence, people change their attitudes, people treat you in different ways, and all those kind of stuff. Like you become in a space of negativity. So I wanted to ask him, how do you keep like a positive mindset, and just have a positive attitude in everything that you do, and just avoid being pessimistic and focus on your goal in a positive way? That's my question.
All right. Thank you, Zukanye. Kwakho?
Hi, Zukanye. That's a very important question, especially regarding to also keeping a positive mindset in whatever you do. That's very, very important. It goes back to that you are on your own in this instance. You need to write the exams on your own. So whoever maybe treats you differently than they were doing right now, it's not the time to focus on that. Maybe you can come back to focus on that another time, but right now it's all about you and your studies. Maybe if your studies are actually giving you a problem in terms of maybe the negative mindset is coming from not being able to grasp the content well or anything like that, you always have someone, maybe your teacher, who can actually help you in terms of whatever you're struggling with grasping, So go to your teacher, tell them, no, this topic, maybe this and this, I'm struggling with, so that they can help you. And in terms of you always need to have that positive mindset. So that's a very, very important question. Thank you for asking.
All right. Any other questions from the floor? I love that response, Kwakho. Really, really like it. Any other questions, FGLs? This is your moment, hey? This is how you get to 8 distinctions. Kwakho's done it. You want to get there as well. Anything that I may have missed that you really need to know? Do you see a hand? I don't see a hand.
There's no hand.
There's no hand.
Zabalaza.
Zabalaza.
Afternoon to everyone. My question for Kwakho is, how do you, specifically for grade 11 finals, how important is it to actually allocate equal time for each of the subjects, and is it advised to focus more on the topics that you don't know than the topics that you can get average marks in order to prepare well for grade 12, since grade 12 is more of grade 11 work?
Oh, hi, Zabalaza. Indeed, grade 12 is more or less a revision of grade 11 work. So the better, the more you're comfortable with the grade 11 work, the better for you it will be in terms of the grade 12 work. But I wouldn't advise you spending equal time for each of the contents or subjects, because it's all about which maybe portion, which section needs more work than the other. I mean, you need to balance. So that's the main point about this session. You need to balance. That's the only way you will actually get your 8 distinctions. I mean, you also need to maximize on the part that so make sure you maximize, but then at the same time, do not say, I do not know the probability section, so I will sacrifice it. Sometimes the probability section in the question paper will be a lot easier than maybe what you think And so getting into the question paper thinking, okay, I spend a lot of more time maybe in what did you do in grade 11? I don't know, maybe spending a lot of time in whatever you were doing, and then now not spending time in the other thing. It actually can be dangerous, because as I've said, the other one may be easier than the one you thought would be easy. I don't know if I made sense there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwakho.
Pleasure.
Okay, all right. Any
Laviwa
other
as well.
questions? I beg your pardon?
Laviwa.
Laviwa, Puti, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Molose. My name is Laviwa, and my surname is Nduzulwana. My question is, how do you actually, you know that, like, as individuals, we all make mistakes, and
Yes.
we're not always, and we're always trying to strive for 100%, and sometimes we get 94%, 90%. So my question is, how do you reflect on your mistakes, so that you don't make the same mistakes that you did?
Oh, more would love you. Oh, so that's a very good question again. So in terms of making mistakes, it's very natural, and mostly it's always on the things that we know. So we are all casual on things we know, because we know let's say maybe patterns, that you will ace pattern gets more likelier.
Oh, the network there. Good Kwakho, you seem to be...
Sorry.
You froze there for a little bit. Could you please start with your response to Lavio again?
Oh, you didn't catch?
Didn't catch you. No, we lost you in the network. But Kwakho, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I think it was the Wi-Fi connection. Sorry.
Okay, there we go. Now I can hear you clearly.
Also, Putlavi, I was saying that you are most vulnerable to the things you know more than the things you are not comfortable with, especially in math. You are more likely to make mistakes in the things you are most comfortable with. So you must make sure having proper knowledge in that, then there comes a responsibility for you to actually, when you are doing anything that you are comfortable with, make sure you do not leave room for mistakes. And that's why I've been saying that the time allocation is also very important. You need not to finish the last maybe last in the last minute. Maybe finish maybe 5 minutes before time. Then that 5 minutes is for you to go over your question, reviewing whatever you need to review, and that's when you can actually see your mistake. And most importantly, the ones you are most comfortable with, you go back to them and think, oh, they make any mistake. Also, a couple where, especially to make an example for myself, I used my head to calculate things. So I was likely to make mistakes in that instead. I used to go back to those calculations where I did them in my head and look and see if I did them correctly. So it's all about reviewing.
Okay, all right. There's a question from Isipile. What qualities do you need to be an actuary on a personal level?
What's the question?
What qualities do you need to be an actuary?
So actuary itself is a very, it's a very diverse field. So there's a lot of things you can do. Get health, get into the general insurance, the life insurance. So it's all about which section you will get in once you become an actuary. But then if you are a great problem solver, especially in math, and maybe you did economics here and there, because it also is with the economy. And also advise, if maybe you want to go into the actuary route, you actually know the economic news around the world and not in South Africa only, because that's when you keep being competitive in your respective field. Actually attending some workshops whilst you get into university. That way you will actually be exposed to the working environment, what you like and what you want to get to.
All right. Thank you so much, Kwakho. Olutando, you had your hand up. Kwakho's network is getting a little bit shaky. Hopefully he'll be able to answer your question. Olutando, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening to everyone. My name is Olotando Tutani. I am a commerce learner doing grade 11 in Ebenezer Machombos. My question was, if I recall correctly, you said something about getting demotivated towards your academics in grade 11. And I am having a similar problem with my academics. Before, I was a very active learner and a very participative learner towards mathematics. But now my mathematics is dropping drastically, and I get demotivated towards everything and every subject. So I wanted to ask, how did you bounce back from that? How did you bounce back from that? Because I'm struggling to bounce back from that, and it's affecting my attitude towards other subjects that I that I do, and yeah, and other people around me start to distance themselves because I have this weird look on my face. I have a dull soul.
Okay,
All
Olotu.
right.
No, it's mostly about the demotivating part. Start with the demotivating part in terms of being demotivated from the work and your mark actually dropping. It's actually more about who you are surrounding yourself with, you know. So if you are surrounding yourself with maybe people who actually do not like your math, who do not like maybe school, then that's also a problem, because that's what happened to me. I associated with myself with people actually who did not like school at all, used to bank, and all those type of things, you know. So it's all about who you are associating yourself with, and then upon having, because you've done the one of the critical steps you needed to do, which is identifying what's going on with you, you know. You've seen that, oh, my math is dropping because I'm actually demotivated, and I'm actually connecting myself from the work, you know. So what you need to do is to work on that and surround yourself with maybe a couple of, you know, people who are in the same level as you know, people who are top achievers as well, you know. Does that answer you?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Sure,
Thank
sure.
you, Olothando. I think Kwakho had also mentioned that he did lean on family and he leaned on counseling as well to overcome any difficult time, the sense of rebellion, the sense of being demotivated. It's very important that you balance your mental health together with your goals, you know. And he was able to reciprocate the support by showing up as the best version of Kwakho, being a superstar achiever and climbing back to the top ranks of his school as well. But Kwakho, we're going to go to the lion mindset, the lion mentality video, which you've touched on some bits of in your conversation with us today. I do want to really acknowledge the guest from Cote d'Ivoire. Thank you so much for joining us today and for interacting with us. And as you can see, Kwakho, they are really enthralled with the great discipline and the insights you've shared today on how to get to 8 distinctions in Koska Kulupuri. But don't go, because I do want you to see this lion mentality mindset.
If the lion is the king of the jungle, how can he be the king of the jungle? If he's not the biggest, the elephant is probably one of the biggest. He can't be the fastest because that's a cheetah. He can't be the smartest. So he's not the biggest, the fastest, or the smartest. So how does a lion become the king of the jungle? His mentality. That's the only difference of a lion and an elephant. When a lion walks up and sees an elephant, he thinks lunch. An elephant thinks run. And it's all mentality. Because when a male lion walks up, he may be outnumbered by a pack of hyenas, but I'm king of my jungle because of my mentality.
What happens when you're a gazelle and you're not being pushed, you're not being prodded, you're not given a reward, nobody's encouraging you? What happens when you're a gazelle and the lion's not chasing you anymore? You stop running. But what happens when you're a lion? When you are a lion, it does not make a difference. You realize that if your family is going to eat, that if that pack of lions is to survive, then you gotta go hunt. A part of being a beast just ain't eating a gazelle. A part of being a beast is the hunts. It's the hunt that they're excited about. They like to see the gazelles run. Then boom, they take off. Because real lions like to hunt. They love the process just as much as they love the prize. And some of y'all just want to score. You don't like the process. You're not in love with the process.
A true hunter's goal is not the prize. A true hunter's goal is to hunt. That's what they live for. They live to hunt. They don't just live to catch it. It's the whole process. When you are a true hunter, you don't go by time, you go by the gazelle. When you are a true hunter, you hunt until you get a gazelle, and you don't stop until you get one. And then you get another, and then you get another, and you get another. If you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do, be what you say you're gonna be, you're gonna have to lion me out. You a gazelle, you gonna come up short. You a gazelle, you gonna have an average experience. You a student, I need you in lion mode. You an entrepreneur, I need you in lion mode. You trying to lose weight, lion mode. You can't do nothing significant in gazelle mode, nothing. Nothing impressive happens in gazelle mode. Nothing happens in run mode, give up mode, quit mode, scared mode, fearful mode, nothing happens. Everything happens in lion mode like I'm coming to get you.
Everything happens in line mode. Everything happens when you're super focused, laser focused, committed, working hard, lion mode all the way. But Kwakho, final thoughts as we close?
That's a very insightful video to share to the FGLers already. It all goes back to the mentality. The main example of a lion. It is neither the smartest, the strongest, or the fastest. It's the king of the jungle because of its mentality. So to the FGLers, you need not to be the smartest to get your 8 distinctions. You need not to be maybe, that's basically the core idea I wanted, to tell you, to resonate with you about this video of the lion. It's the mindset, you need not to be the smartest. Of course, you are smart.
But the hard work, the dedication, the commitment, the past papers, the time. Thank you so, so much. We appreciate you, Kwakho. You must have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your Saturday. We look forward to hosting you when you become a fellow actuary in the next couple of years as you continue to inspire change and success. And
Look forward to meeting FGL again. Thank you, sister, too.
Thank you so much. Well, there you have it, FGLers. This has been such a power session. So important for you to really keep focused over the next couple of weeks, whether you're sprinting towards your final exam as matric or you're sprinting towards your final exam as grade 11s, 10s, 9s, and 8s. The mindset is important. The hard work you put in and the time you put in over the next couple of weeks is so important. You cannot start the year on such a high. You need to finish on an even higher level than you started this year. We know you can do it. We have every faith and we'll be here to support you always. We've got our tutors that are available. You just need to make use of the resources that we avail to you as FGLers. Practice, practice, practice. Focus, focus, focus. Be selfish. Be determined. This is the only time that matters, that we have to really focus on excelling in your studies. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Can't wait to see you knock your dreams out the park. We will be having some runway sessions before we close off the year. We have not yet confirmed the date, so we'll reach out to you as FGLers in our communications throughout the course of the coming weeks. Thank you so much. You take care. We'll see you soon.